Number 10. Clinton Road. Clinton Road is located off Route 23 in West Milford, and if you happen to find yourself there, make sure you keep your hands and feet inside the vehicle at all times. Not only is the area rife with many paranormal legends, sightings of strange creatures and ghosts, but there is an old ruin that draws evil. The Cross Castle nearby was built in 1905 before burning down 14 years later. Now it is just a shell of a place, but gatherings of witches, Satanists worship there. Should you come across them and have managed to avoid the vengeful spirits that wander the woods, don't make a sound. If you are spotted, these groups will hunt you down and kill you. The road is notorious for UFO sightings and mysterious disappearances, along with rumors that many bodies have been buried there by professional killers. If you do want to tempt fate, you can toss a coin into the Clinton Reservoir, summoning the spirit of a little boy, but thankfully he is one of the only benevolent spirits on the road and will even return your coin. So, get a dollar, earn a dollar. Number 9. The Street with No Name, and it's not the U2 song. Located in New South Wales, Australia, locals do everything they can to avoid this stretch of road. So much so that it is on the list of top 10 haunted roads in the world. The street itself is an overgrown alleyway that runs along a viaduct, and no one can quite put their finger on why it seems like it's surrounded by evil. The area itself has been plagued by horrific bloody crimes, and many visitors have reported feeling like they can't breathe, smelling strange odors, and hearing someone following them, and then no one's there. According to legend, around 6 young people have been found discarded on the road, and each case went cold. 3 disappearances have been confirmed as true, as more than lore and actual fact, but the curiosity that surrounds Jubilee Park and the Street with No Name remain unknown. Number 8. Sweet Hollow Road. Not to be confused with Sleepy Hollow, though Sweet Hollow probably deserves the name more. It is listed on top haunted roads in the world. Located on the north shore of Long Island in northwestern Suffolk County, the road along with the surrounding woods are said to be notoriously haunted. Local lore suggests that indigenous tribes considered the area cursed and wisely wouldn't set foot on it, but then settlers were like, whatever, of course they were. From several sightings of a mysterious lady near the overpass, invisible hands pushing cars towards safety, and a policeman with a hole in the back of his head have all been experienced in Sweet Hollow. Additionally, the woods are plagued by the spirits of those who perished in a fire that destroyed a nearby asylum. So basically, if you're in New York and you want something spooky to go with your bagel, then I suggest taking a trip down Sweet Hollow Road. Number 7. Killeen, Texas. This Reddit user was driving through Killeen, Texas around 2 AM, and we all know how creepy sometimes driving at night can seem. He was heading back to the hotel him and his wife were staying at, and he's about to merge onto the road when he sees lights flashing far behind him, as if he was about to run into them. But there was more than enough distance, so he was like, what? Why are you yelling? Calm down. Whatever, he brushed it off as road rager, but then the car started tailing way too closely. In the rearview mirror, he could make out 2 people, and one of them pulls from the back seat something long and thin. Get what I'm saying? He then decided to make sure the car was following him, so he wasn't crazy, signaled left, signaled right, and sure enough, the car did the same. Eventually, the Reddit user guns off the highway and pulls into a nearby parking lot and cuts the lights. He watches the car, and like some miracle, it passes right in front of them, and they don't even see, but he sees like the people looking side to side looking for them. His wife starts to get concerned, as you would, but after a few minutes, they leave and make it safely to the hotel. Still, whoever they were got a good look at their license plate, so needless to say, he was driving with one eye over his shoulder for the rest of their stay. Number 6. The Dead Man's Curve. The Dead Man's Curve already has a title that should be on this list. It lies at the junction of routes 222 and 125 east of Cincinnati. As you can tell from its name, it's definitely haunted. In October 1969, 5 teens were killed by a speeding car, and since then, people have reported seeing a faceless hitchhiker. One witness reported seeing a pitch black silhouette of a man. She said, and I quote, "I noticed a man's shape on the side of the road. It turned like it was hitchhiking with an arm sticking up. The thing wore light colored pants, a blue shirt, long hair, and a blank, flat surface where the face should have been. We looked back, there was nobody there. I've also seen the black shadow figure walking its slow, labored, dragging walk by the side of the road." Unquote. Could it have been the body of one of the teens or another soul who was lost, perhaps the one who caused the death of these teens, doomed to wander the road for eternity? Number 5. Crossfire. Reddit user many_pancakes recounts this story his girlfriend experienced while taking a trip to Florida. Quote, "My partner went to Florida with her family when she was younger, and they were driving around trying to find some food until they found a Chinese restaurant, and they went in and had some food. There were no other customers, lots of staff, everyone seemed very tense, but the food was great. They left and had a lovely rest of their day. During breakfast the next morning, they turned on the telly, and the news showed the place they had eaten, and they were like, oh wow, we went there. Then the story started, and it turns out no more than 10 minutes after they left, there was a massive shoot up and they all killed one another. Turns out the ignorant British tourists just sat in between some kind of Asian turf war." Unquote. I mean, at least the food was good? I don't know. That's super creepy. Number 4, the Beast of Bray Road. Mark Schaffelman was driving on Highway 18 east of Jefferson County, and it would soon turn into a night he would never forget. As he was passing the indigenous burial mounds in the area, he saw something very tall, or someone, standing near the mound. He got out of his car to start approaching it and soon noticed a repulsive smell of rotting meat. As he got closer, he realized that it definitely wasn't a man, as it looked around 7 feet tall and must have weighed around 500 pounds with the amount of muscle. Mark had heard rumors of the Beast of Bray Road but never saw it before. He booked it away from the site, only to gather courage to revisit some days later. The beast was there again, but this time he stared back, making like these weird grunting sounds. His face was that of a wolf, but his hands were human, though it looked like he had a twisted thumb. After several minutes, the beast disappeared into the forest. Several sightings of the beast are charted across decades, but no one knows if this beast is a man or animal or something else entirely. Number 3, Mothman on the Road. The jury is out as to whether Mothman is actually evil or just simply an omen for humanity. This story from the Thought Catalog is another example of the mystery that is the Mothman. Our storyteller was driving a Freightliner down the 322 west towards Chesterland, Ohio, when he saw a massive flying bird heading straight for him. Thinking he was about to hit his windshield, he ducked out of instinct, only to hear a loud bang as it hit the metal box that his car was driving. He got out and saw it lying on the side of the road, but no sooner after they began approaching it did the creature just stand up on human legs and blast off into the sky. Obviously they ran back into their truck, only to stop to refuel at a gas station like miles later once they thought, they'd gotten rid of it. It was then that they noticed imprints on their truck that looked like wings 6 feet across. The driver avoids driving down that road whatever the cost. Let us know your Mothman theories down below. Evil or not, Mothman does sound like someone I'd never like to meet. Number 2, Wolf Creek. If you've seen the movie, then you know the basic tale, though it's not exactly what happened. The film is about 3 tourists who travel to Wolf Creek only to have their car break down, and a friendly mechanic offers to help them, even gives them a space to sleep. But when they wake up the next morning, horror strikes. This story is actually a combination of what happened to Peter Falconio and Joanna Lees, who were actually traveling on Stewart Highway, and another Australian killer named Ivan Millet. About halfway between their destination and at night, a man got their attention on the road and made them pull over. He said that there were sparks coming out of the exhaust, and when Peter went to the back of the car to see the problem, Joanne heard a shot. The man named Bradley Murdoch tied her hands and then left to deal with Peter's body. Joanne took the opportunity to run and hide behind the bushes, and when he came back to look for her, he couldn't find her. When he left, she waited to ensure he wasn't coming back. She hailed 2 drivers passing on the road and asked for help. He was actually caught and sentenced to 28 years in prison, and Joanne has only recently come out with a book recounting her encounter with evil. Number 1, last but not least, this was so creepy. Since starting this job, I think I've learned a thing or two about cruel killers, more than I ever wanted to know, to be honest. But still, it could never happen to me, right? Well, the uncle of this Reddit user, That's a Paddlin', thought the same thing until years later, after a road trip that went wrong, he made a grim discovery. His uncle used to study medicine at the University of Chicago and decided to go on an adventure one day after class. He decided to hitchhike on his way home, and the man who picked him up seemed kind, upbeat, and super friendly, not creepy at all. But sure enough, the man eventually took a wrong turn. When he pointed this out to the driver, the man simply put his hand on his knee and said, "No son, you're coming with me," unquote, and smiled menacingly. His uncle froze, and as soon as they hit traffic, unlocked the door and got the heck out of Dodge. Needless to say, he second-guessed hitchhiking from this point on, but didn't realize how deadly his mistake could have been until years later. While having coffee at a cafe, he caught the image of the very same man on the screen who had been arrested for the assault and killing of 20 young men. The man's name? John Wayne Gacy. The police noted that Gacy had removed the door handle off the passenger side door to prevent men he picked up from escaping. Just like he did.
Starting us off at number 10 is Route 666. What a fitting number. Also known as the Devil's Highway, Route 666 is a 200-mile north-south carriageway that goes through New Mexico, Utah, Colorado, etc. And funnily enough, the route was renamed to Route 491 back in 2003 because of the original satanic associations and the fact that so many accidents have taken place on it. Every time a fatal or non-fatal accident has happened on the road, it's always been blamed on the name of the road, not maybe someone with a DUI or anything, but the name of the road. Everyone just assumes something paranormal is definitely at play here. Many Native Americans believe skinwalkers are the reasons for all the accidents because they appear out of nowhere and so suddenly, so cars just have to swerve out of the way. Shamans even warn drivers not to continue, but then would have to be summoned to take the lives of those who did not heed his warnings. If skinwalkers aren't bad enough, even hellhounds have been noted to patrol regions of the road in packs. Witnesses have said the hounds have kept pace with the cars no matter how fast they were going. And of course they can also shred your tires with their claws or teeth, or both, and then proceed to maul you inside your car. Paranormal aside, even mechanical failures seem to be more common on this highway than others. Flat tires, overheating, breakdowns, everything apparently. There's even a haunted truck that collides with cars on purpose to run them off the road, which is just personally just not what I'm looking for on a road trip. That's just not really my vibe, personally. Coming in at number 9 is the hitchhiker, and I'm pretty sure everyone has heard some type of variation of this one, so let's just get into it. This legend centers around some mysterious hitchhikers which we already know we shouldn't be picking up or giving a ride. A cab driver found someone dressed in all black with a hood over their face looking for a ride. He picked them up and the person gave an address the driver wasn't familiar with but assured him he could give him directions. They get further and further out, taking back roads and alleys, and eventually they're out of the city completely. Rattled, the driver asks if they're going the right way, to which the person says, "Don't worry, we're almost there." They end up on a road that's basically falling apart, and at this point the driver finally turns around to ask where exactly they're going, to find the back seat empty, and by the time he turns back around he realizes he's heading straight for the edge of a cliff and plummets to his death. Now I'm not sure whether this legend is supernatural in any way, like is a hitchhiker a real person, are they a ghost, how did they vanish from the car like that, I'm confused. Either way, just be very wary when you're picking up hitchhikers. Actually, just don't do it. Don't do it. At number 8 we have the waiting car, and apparently this has happened to many people on road trips. But let's look at one family's experience in particular. Every summer this family would go on a road trip from North Texas to Mexico, and when you're on a stretch of highway in the middle of the desert, it's not really a big deal if the same car has been behind you for ages. I mean, there's not really anywhere else it can go. So at this point the family had been in Mexico for an hour but had a few more hours of the drive left. The user's mum suddenly goes to her dad, "Miguel, that car behind us, it's been behind us since we left Laredo." And the dad responded with what I said earlier about it not being that big of a deal. But then eventually the car behind them started getting closer, and at one point it was practically touching their rear. The other car was playing with them, it would ease off them, then blind them with their headlights, then tailgate them again, etc. And thankfully the mum saw a police car up ahead and they pulled over. After telling the cop what happened, the policeman told them how people had their cars stolen on empty highways by criminals and thugs. He drove behind them for a while for safekeeping, and around 10 minutes later they saw the same car from before on the side of the road waiting for them. Filling our number 7 slot are Hell's Angels. So originally people thought this myth or legend originated sometime in the 90s in LA, but apparently it started in the early 80s in Montana with the Hell's Angels biker gang as the centerpiece. It goes like this. If you're ever driving home late and you pass a car that has its high beams on, as a courtesy gesture you would usually flash your high beams at them to let them know so they stop blinding every driver passing them. But in this instant, a car with high beams on isn't just accidental. If you flashed your high beams at these cars, that was basically you signing your own death warrant. Cars like that were usually driven by initiates for local gangs, mainly Hell's Angels, and their initiation, I guess, was for them to kill you. So next time you decide to go on a road trip, be very careful on who you signal to. Now at number 6 is the petrol pump trap. I think the thing that gives me the most anxiety while driving is running out of petrol and there being no petrol pumps within like a 10-kilometer radius of me, and I'm just like, wow, I'm gonna be stuck here forever, what do I do? But anyway, sometimes finding a petrol pump just isn't that lucky at all. There are so many legends surrounding petrol pumps and bad things happening to people at them, you'd be surprised. Apparently, gas stations are a popular place for people to get ambushed. This story in particular is about two girls who were on a a road trip and decided to stop for gas at 10 p.m. They found a petrol pump that was for the most part not shady at all. It was brightly lit, looked clean, looked busy with other cars, it seemed perfectly fine. The only open pump was in the middle of the station, so the girl got out to fill the tank. As she unscrewed the gas cap, she heard a shout and then turned around to see a man with a gun and a group of people with him. She soon realized all the cars around her were empty and they were decoys, and it was actually a trap for whoever drove into it. The man started yelling at her to get onto the ground and for her friend to get out of the car, otherwise he'd shoot them or rape them or worse. Her friend sat frozen in the car, so the other girl offered to go in and talk to her and get her out. But then obviously instead of talking to her friend, she puts the car in reverse and they both managed to escape. That was just one of many stories about things like this happening, so it's definitely not even a legend but a real thing. Coming in at number 5 is Port Perry Ghost Road. Now legend has it that on this road a motorcyclist crashed at night and was killed sometime in the 1950s. Ever since then, drivers on the road seem to see a motorcycle light in their rearview mirror. The light then catches up to the car and passes it before disappearing entirely. Other accounts say they've just seen a red light roaming the road at night, but you somehow are never able to trace its source. Shady. Just pure shady. And many TV documentaries have been made about the legend and it's become quite a tourist attraction. However, with every legend there are skeptics. Locals who have lived in and around the area for generations say there was no motorcycle accident around the time of the legend. Having said that, the Ontario Ghosts and Hauntings Research Society, which I didn't even know existed, maintain that there are ghost lights in the area, and a dead body was found in the area in the 60s or 70s, so even if a motorcyclist didn't die, this road really should be avoided at all costs. At number 4 is the Cult Trap. Again, variations of this legend always float around, so it's hard to pinpoint really which story was the original, but anyway, legend has it that a man was driving through a bunch of rural back roads at night because he thought it would be a shortcut compared to his usual route. At one point, the roads led him to a long road that was surrounded by crops or tall grass. Halfway down the road, they see a car, and in some stories it's on one side of the road, in others it's parked over 2 lanes, but in all variations the boot and doors are always open. Clothes are strewn all over the road and there are 2 bodies on the ground. Obviously the driver's first reaction is to get out and help the people, but when they go to call the ambulance, they realize they have no service. And then things get a bit fishy. Everything just seems too accident-like, almost like it had been staged. Now the next part has many variations. Sometimes the driver just completely avoids the scene and goes around it. Another has him seeing reflections of light on eyes in the grass by the road. But either way, as the person drives away, they see the 2 bodies on the ground getting on their knees and 20 people magically emerging from the tall grass. Had the person stayed, well, we can all guess what would have become of him or her. Filling our number 3 slot is the Pavement Bigfoot. I just tried to be creative there, but there's a legend that surrounds Bray Road in the town of Elkhorn, Wisconsin. Even the name of the town sounds Lord of the Rings-esque. But anyway, to any person, Bray Road looks pretty, peaceful, and normal, surrounded by crops and greenery. It looks as good as any road, really. False. By night, the beast of Bray is said to haunt a certain part of Bray Road. Eyewitness reports have varied throughout time, but the beast is meant to have Bigfoot-like proportions, and many have speculated that it's actually in fact a werewolf. But honestly, if you're giving me a choice between running into Bigfoot on my road trip or running into a werewolf, I would honestly choose none and just cancel my trip. Is that not the obvious choice here? I'm not about to get stuck in the middle of nowhere in Wisconsin with the beast of Bray Road ready to attack me in the sidelines. That's just a hard no from me, and it should be a hard no from you too. Now at number 2 is Route 2A. Now Route 2A is a dangerous route located in Haynesville, Maine. Now this one is known for the high number of accidents that happen there, the bad driving conditions, and the whole host of spirits that have been seen there over the past few years, or decades really. Great, everything that makes a road not drivable. You know a road is problematic when there's even a song about it called A Tombstone Every Mile. Need I say more? Whilst many people have died in car accidents there, there's also an urban legend surrounding the road. Many people have seen a woman shouting at drivers passing by and saying how her husband is trapped in their car and that they need help. But if you do end up stopping for her, she just disappears. The story goes that the husband got stuck in there and died of carbon monoxide poisoning, and the wife either froze to death outside waiting for help or she was hit by a car, and hence they have some unfinished business with the area. Other accounts have said they've seen a little girl on the side of the road that was killed by a truck years ago. Either way, let's just not. And finally, at number 1 is Shades of Death Road. Honestly, this one can be done in 5 seconds because all I have to say is look at the name of the road, have 1 brain cell, don't travel on it. The end. But no, seriously, Shades of Death Road, real name by the way, is a quiet country lane located in Warren County, New Jersey, and the legends surrounding this road are plentiful. The road runs alongside an old haunted lake bed which has pillars of mist rising from it, and no one knows how that's caused, but it's just there. Apparently, early settlers killed native Indians and threw them into the lake, and their unhappy souls lived on to haunt the lake and the road. Some say they've seen the dead walk alongside the road amidst the mist. People in the area say the site used to be the location of so many deaths they thought it was cursed. Another story was that the original people who lived in the area were a band of squatters, of vile men who used to fight each other for women, and those fights would result in someone always dying. As their reputation grew, the area started being called Shades of Death. Another story was that it was actually called the Shades originally because of the low-hanging trees that formed a canopy which made it easier for murders to happen there and stay unsolved. Either way, whichever story you believe, this road is one you should definitely try to avoid for a plethora of reasons, and I just told you all of them.
Starting off this countdown, we have the face print. So this girl and her family was road tripping from Portland, Oregon to the Northwest Territories in Canada to visit her grandparents. After driving for quite some time, they stopped at a campground to sleep in the van. She was fast asleep in the passenger seat when she heard strange footsteps coming from outside her van. She woke up and looked out the window but couldn't see anything, so went back to sleep. But the next day, she was horrified. When she woke up, she glanced out the window and saw a full face print on it. Someone had been peering in, watching them sleep during the night. Yep, that's a note for me. In our 9th spot, we have the road that doesn't exist. And if you guys are liking this video so far, then why don't you give it a big thumbs up, because it really helps us out. This story was shared by Reddit user Team Macon7. Several years ago, she and her friends decided to go on a road trip to visit their mutual friend at her university. They printed off detailed directions, and the trip was only supposed to take 3 hours. But at one point, the directions took them through a sketchy path in the woods, and they were driving through this forest area for about an hour. By then, it was already past 3 hours, and they should have arrived there already. But finally, 4.5 hours later, they arrived at their friend's place. They enjoyed the weekend there, and a couple months later, they decided to go back and visit. So they got their directions and followed the exact same route that they did before, except they never encountered this long path through the woods. It's like all of a sudden the road just disappeared. I mean, it could just be that they took a wrong turn, but they are insistent that both times they followed the directions accurately. Somehow, a road just disappeared. Coming in at number 8, we have the gas station. So this next woman shared a story from the time her and her girlfriends went on a road trip together. It was around 10 at night and they needed to stop for gas. Since they were young females, they looked for a well-lit and busy gas station to pull over to. Once they found one, they pulled over and the driver got out to fill the tank. But just as she started unscrewing the gas cap, an armed man with a gun and his crew surrounded her and shouted at her to get on the ground. That's when she realized it had been a trap. All the other cars at the gas station were empty. No one was driving them. They just positioned their cars there and waited until someone used the center pump. Thankfully, this girl was a quick thinker, and the gunman wasn't that smart. She begged for her to go into the car and talk to her friends, and he let her. But as soon as she got in her car, she threw it in reverse and nearly ran the guys over. She then sped out of there so fast and never looked back. Coming in at number 7, we have the road psycho. So this next woman and her husband were driving on the highway late at night on their way home from a trip. There wasn't a lot of cars on the highway, so it was a pretty peaceful drive. That was until this old lady raced up beside them in the adjacent lane. She then started to merge into their lane and tried to ram them off the road. And it's not like she was some innocent old lady that just didn't see them. No, the whole time this was happening, she was staring right at them and smiling, like she purposely wanted to see them get into a car accident. That is one sick old lady. In our 6th spot, we have the close call. So this young woman took a road trip to Florida with her family. That's when they decided to pull over to get some dinner. They finished their meals and headed to their hotel. The next day during breakfast, they turned on the television and saw that a reporter was talking about the restaurant that they had just eaten at the previous night. Turns out that 10 minutes after they left, there was a huge gang fight that took place in the restaurant, and a number of people were shot dead. Talk about a close call. Had they just been there for 10 minutes longer, they may not have been alive today. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the trailer. Honestly, while researching this topic, I found a number of stories of people getting followed by creepy men in trucks. So please, be careful out there. And be extra cautious if you're driving alone at night. So the story is basically about that. It was around 2 a.m. and a man was headed to his hotel with his wife. That's when he noticed that the truck behind him had been following him for quite some time. Growing paranoid, he put on his turning signals as if he was about to get off at the exit, and so did the truck. But he didn't get off at the exit. The truck continued to follow close behind and copied his every move. That's when he decided to get off at the next exit and find a full parking lot to pull into. He pulled into it, parked beside another car, and switched off his lights. And what do you know? The truck came into the parking lot and made circles looking for them. After a couple of minutes, the truck finally leaves, and the man makes it safely to his destination. That's horrifying though. I don't even want to know what the driver's intentions were. In our 4th spot, we have the guardian angel. So according to this next Reddit user, her grandpa used to be a long-distance truck driver. So he would often drive long hours on unfamiliar roads. Well, one day he was driving down a single-lane country road. It was around 2 to 3 in the morning and the road was pitch black. Only his headlights were lighting up the road. Well, as he was driving, he felt a hand on his shoulder and a voice whisper his name in his ear. As soon as he heard this, he slammed on his brakes. And good thing he did. Seconds later, his headlights lit up a pile of 3 crashed cars that were blocking the entire road. He had just managed to escape the wreckage. Had he not braked when he did, he would have smacked right into the cars. Now, the reason he stopped was because he recognized the voice. It was the voice of his mom that passed away a few years previously. So she was looking out for him and saved him from getting into a terrible crash. Moving on at number 3, we have the end of the road. This story was shared by Reddit user Che Sarah. So this happened while she was driving from California to Ohio with her mom. They were driving at night on a lone road when all of a sudden her check engine light came on. So she stopped the car and got out. But when she did, she noticed the rest of the road was blocked off. The road just ended out of nowhere. It was under construction, and so the whole road was blocked off completely. Good thing that they stopped when they did, or else they would have crashed right into the construction zone. Not only that, they were in the middle of nowhere. There were no other cars or buildings or signs. So they just hopped back in the car and prayed that they would somehow find their way. Coming in at number 2, we have the flat tire. If you drive, here's your reminder to always carry a spare tire with you and make sure you know how to change a tire by yourself. So this next individual was driving from eastern Colorado to Wyoming. It was the middle of the night and they were alone on a dirt road. That's when they heard a loud bang. So it was their tire. It had popped. So he pulls over and gets out into the darkness. He begins changing his tire as fast as he can when he hears a man say, "Need any help with that?" Yeah, that's my impression of the man. He said it just like that probably. He spun around, but no one was standing there. He then grabbed his tire iron and started yelling out, "Who's out there?" But all there was dead silence. He finished putting on the tire and sped the heck out of there. I'm just glad that he didn't start walking around in the forest, trying to investigate. Because you all know that if this was a horror movie, that's what he would have done. And it would not have ended well for him. And in our number 1 spot, we have the ghost truck. So this next individual and her boyfriend were driving back home from a wedding. The trek home was about a 3-hour drive. The boyfriend had stayed sober as he was the designated driver. As they were driving along some dark country roads, they came across a truck headed directly at them. They both screamed as the bright headlights washed over them. He swerved the car to the side and nearly into a ditch. But when they looked behind them, there was nothing. No truck, no lights, no nothing. They were on a narrow country road. There was no way the truck could have went by them without smacking them. So what is it that they saw? They are convinced that it was a ghost truck. And turns out that years ago, a man lost his life after crashing head-on with a trucker who had gotten lost and went down the wrong way. So that's pretty scary. All right, guys.